Wow, another beautiful day to come together and just discuss about biblical entrepreneurship as concerns young adults. We want to welcome you this afternoon, or depending on what wherever you are, what time it is, you will be watching this. We just want to continue on with the discussion that we have been having concerning biblical entrepreneurship. And so we've gone through quite a journey. And can you imagine that today is week 11? We started off with introduction, looking at principles of biblical entrepreneurship. We looked at attitudes of a young biblical entrepreneur, characteristics, identifying opportunities, taking calculated risks, solving problems, biblical or business stewardship, biblical profit, biblical entrepreneur goals and responsibilities. And then last week, we looked at aligning your business idea with your calling. And we had the amazing Chesubire, who was talking to us and sharing her experience together with Thome Mwaniki. And so today I want to welcome them once again to continue on with the next topic. And we want to invite you to engage wherever you are. Just write a comment, write questions that you need to. And today we are looking at counting the cost of starting a kingdom business. And so we want to build you. Let us know where you are. Let us know what kind of business you want to start up. Let us, you can reach to us through the email that is there, info@lively.global, and we will get back to you. And we will also share with you the previous sessions that we have had. And so, without much ado, let me welcome my friend Thome Mwaniki. He's the one who is leading us today. Karibu sana Thome, welcome on board.
Thank you.
Yes, and so today you're gonna lead us. Let me also welcome Chesubire and take it on from here.
Asante sana. Thank you, Pastor Zeph, for that intro. And let me also say this is the courtesy of Nehemiah Project. So we are looking at starting a class later on the same. And so this is more of an introduction level. And so if these are conversations that are so catching, or rather topics that you would want to engage more with, we welcome you, and we'll be giving more details in the future about the same. And so, yes, today we are talking about counting the cost of starting a kingdom business. And this is a topic that a lot of people, when you're trying to start a business, you overlook. I have overlooked it before, and then it costs us in the future. It costs us because we did not count what the costs are for us. And so our foundational scripture for today is coming from the book of Luke, chapter 14, verse 28. And it says, "For which of you intending to build a tower does not sit down first and count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it?" And so, as you can see, ideally we need to sit down and do calculations of what it's going to cost us, and whether we have enough to finish it, and so that we don't start something and somewhere along the way we're not able to see it through. And so today we also have Chesubire, as Pastor Zeph has mentioned, and so I'm going to bring her up and just start engaging from the word go with her on the same. Karibu sana Chesubire. Can you hear me?
Asante sana. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Welcome.
Fantastic. I'm on the road, so you'll forgive me.
It's okay. You're on the road, but I know and I believe that you can talk. So,
Yes.
yeah. So I wanted to ask, because I know you have been in business, and we've had you last week, and you talked much about your business and where you're at. And so maybe now today, as per your business, you can look at what it is. What does it mean to count the cost for you? And so maybe for a start, you can tell us, what do you think, or rather, what do you understand by cost, or rather counting the cost?
So when I think of counting the cost, I look at it in a few different ways, right? There's
Okay.
the cost of actually starting the business. There's the cost of the things I must let go of to build a business. And then there's the cost of running the business, right?
Okay.
Um, because many of us look at the cost of running the business, but we don't realize, like for instance, if I start a business when I'm 20 and I like to party, to build a business, I no longer have the time to party. Okay, I no longer have the time to watch too much TV. I don't have the time to sit in corners and do aimless things. So I think that's the bigger cost most of us do not count. Because to start a business, I can't start it today and tomorrow I make $1 million. I need to put the work into it, right?
Yeah.
Every day. Not the way you wake up in the morning, you know, I need to see this client, talk to that client, do this marketing, get that work in place. There are things you must do on a day-to-day basis, which means there are things you must stop doing on a day-to-day basis. So that is the one cost I know most of us forget to actually calculate in and count. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Do you
Wow.
want me
So
to
there's the
go on to the others? Or?
Well, at least you've given us an understanding of what cost really is, and
Yes.
what we normally overlook. And I think what I hear you saying is, most of the times when you're counting cost, we count what cost in terms of money, what it's going to cost us in terms of money, and forget to factor in time. If I'm not wrong, that is what you're bringing to light, right?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So I'm going to put up a definition for cost. And what are costs? So costs are the financial and human sacrifices that must be made in order to take advantage of an opportunity. The cost of becoming a biblical entrepreneur not only involves giving up the opportunity to receive regular paychecks, the health benefits from a 9 to 5 job, but also the financial expenses of starting and operating a business. And so I think what you have said is in line with this. And there are, the definition is basically financial and human sacrifices. So this is a sacrifice that has to be made in order to take advantage of an opportunity. And I know we talked about opportunity before, how to identify opportunities, and we said opportunity is where preparation meets God's timing. And so what you have to give up for you to take advantage of that, be it financial, be it human sacrifices, and what you're talking of, stop watching TV all the time, sleeping late, maybe waking up very early, are some of the costs that we need to pay. There's this misunderstanding that has been there, where we normally think, because and I was there at some point where I thought I needed to start a business so I could have more free time. I needed to start a business so that I can go to bed very early and wake up very late, not have to to commute to my job place very early in the morning and all that. But it was wrong. It was a fallacy per se, because that was not true. Up to this point, I think I work more hours than I have ever worked for anyone. And so yeah, so those are those are the costs that we're looking at. And I want yes, do you have anything to add? on that?
No, I just find it funny that we always think we can sleep more and we'll sleep less for many years.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Now, the book of Luke, still, I think chapter 4. Yeah, still chapter 14. We had read verse 28, but now there's the scripture that comes before that. And at this time, well, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, and his own life too, he cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. And this was at a time that Jesus was talking to his disciples and just telling them that it was going to cost them to follow him. And we can see what, as a result, well, when he was choosing his disciples, a lot left what they were doing. There are those who are fishermen and they left that. So people left a lot of things, and because this also involved walking, they would travel to many places, and they will have to give up their families. They will have to give up that comfort of being around their family, their brothers, their sisters, and just follow him. And so this is the cost that the disciples had to bear. And from this also, this is more like carrying your own cross. When he says you have to carry your own cross, that is a cost. You have to give up a lot of things. That is a cost. And so just like this, any business also has a lot of costs that we need to, there are things that we need to give up to just be able to do business. And some of the things are those that we have mentioned: free time, the comfort of having, well, we don't advocate for you to leave your family, but those are some of the costs that there are things that you're used to that you'll have to give up in order to just do your business. And so I want us to look at some of the costs that are involved in a business. But before that, Chess, what are some of the costs that you have had to bear, especially when you had when you were starting, but also when you're operating your business? Chesubire, can you get me? Okay, let me just move forward. And so there are financial costs of starting and operating a business. And so there is the startup costs. So these are the costs for setting up. And so whenever one wants to start a business, they need to think of things to do with registration for the business. There are legal.
Sorry.
Okay. Are you back now?
Go ahead, Robert.
Okay. And so the cost for starting up, there is legal costs. When you want to register, you may need to even hire a business coach to just work with you, help you start setting up. You need to do a lot of, let's say, market research. You need to probably pay for a business room. You need to, if you're into product business, you need to buy your first stock. If you're in service business, then you need to pay for the skills if you're going to learn and all those. So those are some of the startup costs that are involved. Then there is the cost of goods and services sold. And so this is the cost for, especially for goods, this is the cost of production. So if you're in a product business, let's say something like coffee, you need to cater for the cost for buying the coffee beans themselves, grinding, if that is manufacturing that you're in. But also when you're selling, there are the cost of movement. You need to move from one point to another. If you're in services industry, then if it is going to cost you time to produce the services, then that is a cost. There are costs, especially when, let's say, you have softwares that you need to buy. If you have, so there are those things that you will need to just invest in, or rather buy, for you to be able to produce this specific product that it is that you're selling. Then there's the operating costs. Now, mostly you find that a lot of people, when they're starting up, you may not have a lot of operating costs because you may run from your house, your business. The cost of production might really not be so much. But then now operating cost is where you need to pay for your bills, utilities. We are talking of paying for the rent, electricity, water, but also paying for your employees. That is, if you have any. So these are daily to daily costs that are not directly involved in the production of your goods and services. And so these are costs that are not billable. You cannot ask a client to pay for your electricity. You cannot ask for a client to pay for your accountant. You cannot ask a client to pay for your HR person. And so these are some of the costs that are there to just operate. And so it is very important for one to be able to know all these costs and have them in mind before they get into a business, and so that you're prepared, you know where you're going to get the money from before you can actually be able to monetize, to actually get profits. Because when you're starting, one thing is you don't start getting money immediately, and even if you do, the money might not actually return all the costs that you have. And so you may need to have to save. You may need to probably get a loan if that's something you want to, but you need to count these costs so that you can prepare. And mostly this is for preparation. And remember, we say now opportunities come once you have prepared, and that is God's timing. So you need to prepare before you actually get into the actual business. Now, what is an opportunity cost? I know we have talked a bit about that, and I will do this definition, and then I'll be involving you, Chesubire. So an opportunity cost is the value of what you must give up to pursue the present opportunities before you. So an opportunity cost is not, it's not most of what we have discussed up there. Opportunity cost is what you must give up. So this might be going for vacations, longer vacations probably. This might be paying for house internet, to pay for the office internet. And so opportunity cost is really what you must give up. And so Chesubire, I know you have been in business and a number of business for a number of years. What are some of the opportunity costs that you have had in your business?
Yes. You want me to describe them?
Probably give you can describe them, and can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Yes. So I want you to probably talk about some of these costs that you have been involved in, but also what does it mean? Is it something that is worth giving up, or is it something that you'd rather give up the business and continue with that? Yeah.
So opportunity cost is interesting from my perspective because it makes us think, right? What is that thing you must give up to ensure your business thrives? And I'll use a strange example.
Yeah.
One aspect of opportunity cost we do not look at is what will I lose if I don't start, right? So it will need in the market that he realized if he did not pursue this, this particular need that he had seen in the market, some people will go without having their needs met, right?
Yeah.
So for him, there are two angles of it for opportunity cost. The potential of building something big, which is one, but then if he didn't, for him, the opportunity cost was that he had to make use, he had to borrow part of the kitchen from his wife, right? Because he had to boil all these things in the kitchen. When he explained where he could go with it, then it was possible for her to see the benefit of the loss of what did he have to give by salon. In the days of starting Nice and Lovely, men in a salon was not a thing. It was not like today. You can find a guy in a kinyosis, manicure, pedicure, what. In the days of the beginning of Nice and Lovely, that was not a thing you would do as a guy. So the opportunity cost for him was his quote unquote reputation and image, because he would be seen hawking sabuni ya nywele surely. But for him, seeing the need that he needed to meet, he began hanging around the salons and finding out from them, what is it that you need more? And that's how he learned about conditioner and the other things for hair. So the biggest thing he gave up to start what eventually became a very successful business is reputation and quote unquote image, which man, full grown man, wants to be seen in a salon now wanawake. See how many billions he made, and he only sold one product line. He didn't sell Nice and Love, the whole company. He sold one product line. So the years he spent building this thing, not going for get-togethers, away from his children, pushing his children to join, those eventually give back. So when you look at opportunity cost, I like to look at it in terms of what will giving this up bring. And if the thing it brings much where we couldn't have. So I gave up the office in a time of thing on earth. But 10 years ago, you end up looking like a briefcase organization if you have a home office. But for me, it was more important because that way I could keep my staff employed and I could keep food on the plate for all of us. It made us efficient. So we lost quote unquote image for a while until people realize not having an office does not affect their delivery. Owner, you as the founder, acting in exchange. Okay? And in 5 years, I'll be able to take all
I think you're breaking. We are losing you. Okay. Well, I think what Chess is trying to tell us is when she had to give up her office as an opportunity cost. And so I really wish I could hear more, but I'll be bringing you back in a bit. And even for me, some of the I have had to have very, very serious opportunity costs. I have had to pay dearly. I have also had to close an office so that I can concentrate on what is important at some time. I have had to give up comfort. I have had to give up sleep, especially in the line of my business where It takes a lot of time doing editing and compiling videos after shooting and all that. So those are some of the costs that I have, and I believe Chesubire has also had to pay for the business. I want us to discuss some of the common operating costs that are involved in a business. And so this might actually seem very normal, things that we already ought to have thought of, but at times we ignore some. There is the utilities, that is electricity, water. There's salaries, especially where you have employees and people working for you. There is advertising, and advertising is something that a lot of people don't invest in. It's not a cost that a lot of people count, but realizing that advertising is mostly customer acquisition. That is what brings customers to you. And so unless you're able to advertise, you might stall. You might end up selling to your friends, your family, and not acquire new customers, not get people who will sustain you longer. Because family will be there to support you. People will buy because you're a friend, because you're their family, but they are not buying because they believe in your product. And so once you exhaust your friends, once you exhaust your family, then you need to move beyond that. And so you can only do that by advertising and marketing beyond that. There is insurance. Insurance, it's a cost that a lot of us ignore. I know, even for me, I have gotten to a point that I'm saying, I have not gone to hospital anytime soon. I am very healthy. So me paying my medical insurance yearly is at times sounds like a waste of money. But truth is, there is that time that insurance comes and cushions you. There's that time that you will not be able to afford something, and insurance comes and sorts you. So there are different kind of insurances, especially for businesses. There's insurance against fire, against burglary. There are all sorts of insurances that you can get nowadays to just cushion you. If you deal with very expensive equipment, those are things that you need to think of insuring, so that you don't you're not back to ground zero when something happens. There's also interest. If you have borrowed money, if you have gotten a loan, there's interest that you need to pay. That is a cost. There's a rent for the office that is involved. And mostly nowadays you find that people will ask you for 3-4 months rent. They'll ask you for 2 months deposit so that you can just have that office. But also in the office, you need to buy things like you need to buy the furniture, you need to buy all those things. Then there's transportation. Transportation is movement for your staff. If you've added it to their salary, it's okay. But also for you as a business person, you need to be able to move from point 1 to point 2 to meet with your clients, to seal some of these deals and all that. And so these are some of the common operating costs that are involved in any business. But also the thing is, every other business is also unique in its own way. Businesses will also have different operating costs that are unique to their businesses. If it's service, it's also different. When it's product, it's very different. And I don't know whether Chesubire, you're able now to hear me.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you. Sorry, we lost you.
I have had to park. Sorry.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can pick from where you were at, but also comment something on the operating costs, some of the common operating costs.
So the reality is, opportunity cost is what you must give away to be part of your business. But I also look at it in terms of what that giving up that opportunity will gain me back. So I gave the example of the gentleman, of the guy who sold my son laptop. His opportunity cost was he had to spend time in salons in the beginning to understand these products, and then he'd go and he'd make them in the house. Now imagine a full grown man going around and hanging out in salons, what people would say. So then in view of what he could achieve on the other side of it, it was worth it. So that's why for me, opportunity cost is important. And I think I need to make a note of the fact that opportunity cost is it's a going concern. It never stops. Every time I choose to explore a new opportunity, I'm giving up something to explore it. And that also ties into the whole thing of office cost, operating costs. Because, for instance, like I gave the example of giving up an office so that I can be able to keep my staff. The opportunity cost there for us was reputational. At this point where we are in COVID-19 and all the pandemics and all the measures in place, the opportunity cost of not going online is very high. And going online helps my operating costs because I don't need an office and so no one can give me pressure. So when we look at these in realities and as like opposites in the same conversation, it becomes important to see that the dimension that we must consistently pursue is one to remain viable, and viability is heavily around our ability to meet our operating costs and expenses. One of the big challenges we have as SMEs is growing too fast. So I think I need somebody to do my marketing, I bring a guy. I need somebody to do my sales, I bring a guy. I need somebody to clean the office, I bring a guy. And what happens is at the end of the day, we are so cost heavy. And I like something that I keep learning. I must be as light as possible to remain viable for as long as possible, which means I need to manage my operating costs. So instead of an office, can I customize a corner in my house, even if it's a bed sitter, have a table and a chair? Instead of spending a lot of time on data, can I get Wi-Fi, right? Because I will be sitting there a lot. And then those are the things that guide how you manage your operating costs. So that at the end of the day, the thing that you are able to do well is to deliver your product and your service well.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. I'm tempted to ask, what is one time that you did not count the cost and it costed you?
Wow, okay. So we were running a business and we got a lot of work that we did not have capacity to deliver. So we had to expand our staff team. The mistake we made is that we did not consider all the related costs, if I can put it that way. Yeah, we did not consider you bring on 3 extra hires because of this project, but the project is not generating absolutely enough to cover the 3 everybody plus rent. The net result of that is we had to close down that business because we went into very severe debt. At the point at which you are hiring people, it was because this project has come on board. But you see, with every person you bring on board, you escalate your monthly costs. And we assumed that client will be able to keep up to their weekly payments because that's how we did the calculation for staff. And then the client hit a very rough patch. So for about 3.5 months, we didn't get paid. But we have staff in the office who are working. So eventually what happened, we leveraged with client paid. But by the time client paid, we were beyond help, my friend. We were so far beyond.
We've lost you again.
So, okay, can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay, yes.
So the inability to count the cost upfront and say we can have a maximum of 5 people on board eventually cost 8 people their salary.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
And that doesn't include the owners and the directors.
Okay.
So that for me was a bigger problem because now when I started my next business, that's the place I focused.
Okay. And so how were you able to come out of that?
So we closed that particular business completely, and I reinvented myself by starting a new one. But the thing I promised myself as I closed that business is that every mistake will be a learning curve for the next one. So that is how now I run a virtual office, and I've run a virtual office for 10 years. Because by then I learned to figure out what must I have, exactly what do I need, which is me and one full-time team member. It caused me to turn everybody else I needed into a consultant. So when I have work for you that can pay for you, I bring you on board. At the end of that project, when you go, I release you like that.
Okay.
So for me, that is the learning curve.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. And so even as we talk about the opportunity cost, there are two main types of operating costs, and those are the fixed costs and the variable costs. So the fixed costs are those that will not change. Month in, month out, those are same. But variable costs, they change according to the specific project that one is doing. Um, and so um, yeah, so it's also important to actually do a calculation and know what are my fixed costs and what are my variable costs. And so that will help me to know when I'm doing any business, then these are my fixed costs. And when I'm charging whoever it is that I'm working with, then I have the fixed costs in mind. And remember, I said there are costs that you cannot bill the client. There are costs that are just you to cater for them. And so some of the fixed costs are actually yours. You cannot bill those to the client. You cannot tell the client, I'm paying the rent from your money. I'm paying the internet from your money. Those are costs that are yours, and those are fixed. And then the variable costs are those now that will tell the client, now depending on this kind of project that you're doing, it will cost you this extra. It will cost you this because you're talking of us maybe going to a different country, so the travel costs are there. So these are variable costs that are there and are involved in any business, be it product, be it service industry. So these are very varying. And then there is the issue of keeping records. But before I come to that, sorry for that. Before we come to the records, I want to have you back, Chesubire, especially now that I see you have your camera on. Now, what for because I know there are different kind of businesses that we do, and most predominantly there's the service and the product industry, and there are the fixed costs and variable costs. How do you manage your fixed costs that you're not billing the client and be able to pay for them, even when you don't have clients, or even if the client comes and they bargain and you charge really little for that?
So you're asking how we are able to meet our costs all the time.
Especially the fixed costs, because these are costs that you cannot bill a client. You cannot ask a client for your payroll. You cannot ask the client for your rent directly.
So, okay, I have been predominantly in the service sector, so I can talk from that sector, but I'll touch a bit also, like maybe on manufacturing. The reality is that every activity that you do in your business inputs to your bottom line, every activity. So let's say I'm in the events world. Every event must generate enough for me to cover my costs. So how we used to do it, we used to do a line budget. So when we do I will give you, we're bringing in tents, chairs, decor, everything. Those are billables. And then when I charge the management fee must be able to cover the time of each of my people working on that project for its duration. So for instance, it's a 6-month project. My team is 8 people and they'll be on this project for 6 months. I must be able to raise their money from what I will bill. So whereas you will come to me for a one-day event, the management fee for your event will be lower than the one for a 6-month project. What that does, and even by the time I quote for you, like say I'll quote for you 10,000, by the time I tell you 10,000, I know airtime is, SMS is, Wi-Fi is. So we have to get to the place where we know our costs so intimately. So that if I tell you your project is 6 months and it means that we're selling tickets for you, I'll use one of the projects we used to work on. We used to bill 1.5 million for a period of 6 months. But I was running a team of 12, 8 dedicated ticket sales guys. So I have to be able to cover the cost of space, their salaries, the airtime, but it's in my management fee. Now, there was a day we calculated management fee badly. I can't go back and tell my staff, Sita Walipa, how? They have worked, they have delivered. So the person who takes the hit when you do a bad calculation is you as the founder. That one taught me never again. I never had an instance where that happened because now I sat down and I itemized CEO's time on this project is X, admin is Y, finance is Z, sales team are A. And because the sales team are spending 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 6 months, it must be commensurate, something worth for them to come out. And I believe it's the same in the product sector. You cannot buy a shirt at 200 and sell at 201. You need to be able to cover an element of your fare, your airtime, and your labor. So the challenge comes in, most of us do not understand costing. There's a conversation of the cost of goods sold and then the value I give to you. I'm not picking it. If you're picking it from the warehouse yourself, there's nothing you will charge on top. But if I'm picking it from the warehouse, bringing it to you, you've seen how guys say, you buy from these guys online, they say the shoe is 2,000, delivery is at your cost. Because they know if they charge me 2,200, I will complain. So that difference of that rider picking it from their shop to bring it to me, they've passed that cost to me. So the true cost of that shoe is 2,200 and a few shillings for my airtime. So when I say my shoe cost me 2,000, that's not quite true. And that's how we get into the cycles of not having it. So how do we ensure we can meet our costs? Is making sure that our calculations and our cost of sales to clients is correct. That's how we start. That's how we do it right. And then we know that on every sale, I need to make 100 shillings because at the end of the month, that's how people can say every month we must sell 200 pairs of shoes to cover our costs. When they say to cover our costs, they're covering the cost of the purchase of shoe plus their operating costs.
Wow. And what would you say is the difference between the price and the cost?
So remember we talked about cost of goods sold, which is the production cost of the acquisition cost. The price will include the cost of goods sold, all these other costs we're talking about, a percentage of it or an element of it, and then profit. Understand we're in business to make profit. If you do not make profit in a business, there's a problem with your business itself. So the price is the combination of the purchase price of the product, if it's a product, or what it takes for me in the service industry to put it together, an element of my fixed costs and profit. That's the difference.
Wow.
So
and I have seen... Yeah, sure. Go on.
If you can take like the cost of a tube of toothpaste in the supermarket and in the warehouse and what it is sold in the supermarket, that is a big disparity. So every item a supermarket sells contributes to electricity, water, staff, because somebody has to panga it, and rent and all those things. Yes.
Okay. what I wanted to comment is a lot of people, especially when you're starting business, we normally count the costs. Okay,
Yes.
we count the cost of producing something, and when the client asks, we tell them it's going to cost you this much, and we forget to add our profit.
Yes.
We normally give our cost as the price to the client, and so we forget the profit. And then now, once we do the job, we start cutting corners so that we can reduce the costs and remain with a margin, hence
Yes.
affecting the quality of the business itself. And I would
If you're
want,
going to do
yes,
something like that, then you must have pre-negotiated a discount from source.
yeah,
Pre-negotiated. Yes.
yes, wow, nice. Well, I want us to, even as you continue to look at now documentation, something that we fail at, and keeping good records means properly recording the daily expenses and income of the business. Would you say you're at a point that you do proper records for your business?
Completely. I have been
And
burnt
what,
before.
yeah.
Yes.
What would you say is the best way to do that, and why is it important to have proper records?
One of the biggest reasons you must have proper records is KRA. When KRA come, you have to be able to prove that what you say you earned and what you spent is true. That's one of the biggest reasons. But the other one, which for me is bigger than KRA, is to be accountable for everything you earn. And why do I say that? Think about it like this. Every day we spend something little to get our work done, right? So for instance, I left my house to go for a meeting with a client, right? So
Yeah.
that very act of leaving my house to go for the meeting, that fuel needs to be covered. That time needs to be covered. I am very old school. I use a notebook. So I use a daily planner. So every day I write out what I need to do. At the end of the day, at the bottom of the page, very often in red, I write all the payments I've made. But the other thing I've begun doing is I make all my payments off the bank. All my payments, either off the bank or on M-Pesa, because human is to error, I might forget. So when I go to Naivas to shop, I either pay by M-Pesa or I swipe a card. Why? It leaves a digital footprint somewhere. If I go to my statement, I see Naivas, I can think back to that day, go to my daily planner, and my daily planner will have the list of things I needed to do for that day to be successful. So then it is a mix of handwritten, old school, and digital, current. And then when my accountant comes to me at the end of the month and asks, how did we spend the money? We received 50,000 and the account is empty. Where is it? I can easily generate off the bank statement, off my M-Pesa statement, and tally it with my notebook. At the end of the year, all I do is upload all this stuff into a spreadsheet, give it to my accountant. She files returns both for me and for the company. So it starts with simple things. Last week I was in a session where we're talking about governance, and the trainer was saying the beginning of good governance is accurate record keeping. So if you must write it down every day, write it down. I don't know if you've gone to shops where there's like a big book they write in. If you go to House of Leather, they have a big book that every day they note, as you leave, you go through this guy, he writes receipt number, amount, receipt number, amount. That is a tally to cross-check that when they do the tills and this handwritten record match. In accounting, it's called double entry. So you always have two sets of records.
Okay. Wow. And now that you're talking about records and the expenses and incomes, I think the most important thing to also remember is this is a document that also helps you to know what your costs are. Because when you record daily, you have a daily record of what you're spending money into. Then that builds a monthly record of the cost that you are involved in, and things now you're able to actually factor them in when you're charging your client. And now that yes, you have something to say.
Yeah, it also helps you know on an average month what is the minimum you can make.
Yeah.
Yes.
And why is that important?
That's important because it then tells you what your sales must be. If you're supposed to be left with a profit or an income in the company beyond your salary, then you need to know I need to move X number of items, I need to do X number of jobs, see X number of clients. Then that gives you a base to know your break even point. Many businesses are operating as losses. Break even is where at least your expenses and your income match, and then now you can begin to talk about profit. You now being in profit. That's
Yeah.
why it's important.
And even as we close, and you mentioned you're mostly in the service industry. How do you charge? How do you come up with that figure that you ask the client?
Okay, several ways. So I will use an events business as an example. So in the events,
Okay.
say we're doing a wedding. So there are tents, there's catering, there's decor, there's photography, videography, all those things. So those ones are standing cost. So you just populate line budget like that, like that, like that. But then there's the time it takes to develop the concept. There's the time the number of phone calls you have done. There's the conversation site visits you will do with clients and the teams you'll bring on board. The way you know how much to charge is you have to know what it takes to put this thing together. So if you go to Bidco today, they can definitely tell you every tube of toothpaste, the 25 gram costs X to produce, the 50 gram up to the 300 gram. They know. If you go to a dairy, they know it costs X to produce a packet of milk. And that knowledge is what I call historical knowledge. It comes from the repeated transactions. Remember last week I said when you have an idea that you want to start, you first of all test it before you register the business, right?
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
that testing phase, you're able to figure out what your costs are. So that by the time you get into the business phase, you know what your costs are. You know how much it costs you to produce X or Y. You're able to understand what are the elements that go into it. You're able to track, oh, I built this one, I didn't build that one. So then at the end of the day, you start by figuring these things out from the onset. You don't figure out cost ukiwa ndani. Ukiwa ndani ushachelewa. You probably made a loss on your first sale. That's where you
Yeah.
start. The fact that you have done this once, twice, thrice, and you have logged every cost you have incurred as you did those 1, 2, 3s, then you're able to build up what it costs to do your business. Yes.
Wow. Even as you come to a close, I know for me, maybe it's a bit different, and the dynamics are also different, because for me, I can actually, my business is film, and I have equipment already. And I have a laptop, I have a camera. I don't buy things every other job that I'm going out to. And so for me, how I have done it is I have calculated my hourly rate for my time as a cost. And so that is calculated, and I know if I'm going to engage in this number of hours, now as per the client's scope of work, then I calculate that. I say if it's 10 hours, 10 times my rate. And then now there are hard costs that come in. So at times you'll find a job that I'm doing, I don't have a specific equipment that I need, and so I can hire that equipment. So that becomes hard costs. So those are hard costs that I come up with. And so I do the hourly rate, I multiply by the number of hours, and then I add to the hard cost that I have to know my production cost. And then now from there, I can add my profit. So how much profit do I need to make? And so I add that. And so as we see, costing is very important. Counting the cost is very important to just determining how you're doing business and whether you're going to move from a level of investment to a level of making money and profitability. Chesubire, what are your last words as we bring this to a close?
I think that the thing I would say, which is most critical, is we must do several things. We must critically look at our opportunity cost before we start. What will it cost us to do this business? We must look at the potential the business will bring back to us. And then we must actually begin to tabulate the cost. Now, I know a lot of young people will say, oh, I don't know how to do that. And remember at the beginning, you talked about the need to look for a mentor or somebody to work with you.
Yeah.
The other thing, and I believe I talked about it a lot last week, is accountability. We have to be accountable to somebody. We do not go into business just to do business to be known as business people. When we're doing business as children of God, we go into business to shift the landscape, to have impact, and to create opportunities. So if you are not doing those three and you're making profit, you are outside. Genesis talks about be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth and have dominion. To have dominion is to influence policy, environment, police, influence countries, nations, and the world at large. So the cost for a business owner in who is also a believer has to be the element of how does my faith affect the community. And if you cannot figure that out, if the business you're going into does not answer an impact question, take a breath, stop, and go back and calculate that impact question. Because he counted the cost and he did, yeah. I'm done.
I had lost you a bit, but thank you. I've gotten most of everything that we need to have an impact.
Yes.
Even as we calculate what is the opportunity cost,
Yes.
but also coming up, starting a business, but also operating it. Because I know, even for me, I know we normally count the cost for starting up. But when now we move from starting up to operating, these are things that we have overlooked. But also opportunity cost needs to also, we need to have an impact. For any business, there has to be an impact. There has to be a cost that is paid. But most of all, is to remember to do a kingdom business that has impact more than the profits. And our profit is different. The biblical profit is different. It's not the kind of profit that we get in the world. It's not based on the money itself. And so thank you everyone for joining in. It was a good discussion with Kisubire.
Yes.
And so we are coming to an end. Let me say a prayer. And remember to join us every Wednesday. And if you need to talk to us, you can email us at info@lifelead.global. If you need to join us on Zoom, you can also email us and we will be able to send you the Zoom credentials. Let's pray. Dear and Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time. We thank you for the discussion that we've had about counting the cost. And we know counting the cost is not just in our businesses, but also needs to be in our lives and in our work with you. And so remind us constantly to count the cost. Remind us constantly to know what it is that we need to give up so that we can achieve what it is that we need to achieve. Thank you for this discussion. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Goodbye. Thank you for joining. See you next time.